Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another edition of the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. It's been a very chill Sunday for me, and I am excited to be on and start engaging with some people. It's going to be a lot of fun. Jeremy Betts here with you as always, and I've got somebody I've had on the show before, but it's been a little bit. He's all over the place. You see him on the FFSN NFL feed. You see him here on the Steel Curtain Network. It is none other than the coach, KT Smith. Coach, how are you doing tonight? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on. Steeler fans, What's happening? Looking forward to your questions and a great conversation.
Absolutely. Get those questions in. We'll be talking about the Steelers roster. We'll talk about a bunch of different stuff here on the show tonight, but this show is about your questions. It's the Q&A for a reason. We want to talk to you. We want to answer your questions. And who better to do that than somebody who a certified ball knower, as they say, in Coach Kevin Smith. So, Coach, I know you were talking to me pre-show. You've got stuff coming up for high school ball. Tell us a little bit about your schedule coming up here, so everybody knows exactly what you're doing these days as the head coach over there.
Yeah. So our mini camp kicks off a week from today, or a week from tomorrow, I should say, on Monday, and it's pretty similar to what the NFL guys do. You're in shorts. You're not allowed to have any contact. There's lots of rules about heat acclimation and what you're allowed to do specifically. But for the most part, it's install. And you really get into the teaching element of it, which for me is always very rewarding. I mean, you start with when I say you start with basic stuff, it's like, here's how you get in a 3-point stance. I mean, it is basic stuff. But they do it at the NFL level too. I remember when I was out at Steelers training camp 2 years ago, I spent a lot of time watching Pat Meyer on the offensive line, and he was first thing they did, man. He got everybody in the stance, and he was just checking everybody's stance. So
yeah,
you never want to overlook any of the fundamentals. You want to make sure that the most basic stuff is being done perfectly, and then you can move on. And that's really what our summer's like. We just kind of, we start from that. We start from square one, and we start to build from there.
That summer grind is what makes the team, right? In the end, I remember those hot summer days where you were just like, man, I do not want to be out here right now. But that's where you figure it out. That's where you build the team from the ground up and get it going. So the Steelers have been doing the same thing. They've been making a lot of moves. This is a team, Coach, I think coming off of last year, maybe overperformed what they should have been able to do with the poor offensive play they got and poor quarterback play specifically. The defense really stepped up despite injuries to key players. It was kind of a ragtag group at the end of the year. So the title of this show, are there any holes left on the 2024 Steelers roster? We can get nitpicky here if we want to, but just overall, how do you feel about the Steelers roster this year going into 2024 compared to where it was last year? Are you more confident? Do you have higher expectations for this group of guys than maybe last year?
Well, I think with the exception of wide receiver, perhaps they're better in every position group than they were a year ago. We could take the time if we wanted to and go group by group, but you look at the upgrades to the quarterback room, to the offensive line, to the inside linebackers. Those are the three groups that jump out at me that were glaringly, I don't want to say weak last year, but really needed upgrades. And they went out and they addressed them in both free agency and the draft. Bringing in Cam Sutton last week to strengthen the slot corner position, I think was an excellent move. You can say what you want about the off-field stuff. That's a separate conversation. But from a football perspective, it really strengthens what was an existing weakness. So to answer your question, absolutely, man. I think they're way better on paper this year than they were last year.
I think the overall expectation for the Steelers is pretty high right now. And I think that that's fair. You've got a coach in Mike Tomlin who already sets a floor for this team of playoff contention, if you will. My favorite stat of the Coach Tomlin era isn't the fact that he has no losing seasons. It's the one where he's only played one game in his 17-year career with the Pittsburgh Steelers where there were no playoff implications involved with that game for his team. That is an impressive thing. That's the floor of this team. So then you're talking about the ceiling from there. And so I think that you're absolutely right. I 100% agree. I think that this team is built better. They've improved in a lot of ways. And there are some concerns still. I mean, Cam Sutton comes in and had an off year last year, but you could say that's because he was playing out of position and a new defense. There were a lot of variables going on with him over in Detroit. He comes back, and off-field stuff aside, this is a system he knows. It's a team he knows, and I think a role that is better suited for him. So that's an improvement. The wide receiver question is a question here. So I think you could definitely say Deontay Johnson, losing him and replacing him with Roman Wilson and company, it isn't exactly an upgrade there. But are you as concerned about that position group as maybe some other people are? I don't see myself as overly concerned about it, although I would like a little bit of an upgrade. I don't think they need a Brandon Ayuk on this team necessarily to be good on offense.
Yeah, I think it's naive to think that the Steelers will be content to roll into week 1 of the season with the current wide receiver group. You can say all you want about the scheme, a lot of 12 personnel. There's only going to be 2 receivers on the field. But you can't go into a season with George Pickens as the 1 and absolutely no established number 2. I mean, we can call it what we want. Oh, he's the 1, he's the 2, he's the this, that. But if George Pickens goes down, you're now looking at a completely unproven wide receiver room. You're doing a disservice to Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, whomever is playing quarterback by putting him in a position where the wide receiver room is just not at a professional level. None of those guys had. I mean, I can't remember what the numbers were exactly, but I think the combined catches of Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller and Quez Watkins last season was around 20 something. And then Roman Wilson was in college. It just, Calvin Austin, he caught 16 balls, 18 max. So there's got to be another move, I believe, unless one of those guys lights it up. But that is a long shot to me. I do expect a move.
Yeah. Is there value? As a coach, you would know this, I'm sure, but is there value in seeing what you have before making a move? I mean, you got to give these guys a chance to improve, right? Calvin Austin, you got to see what he can do.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's what they're doing right now. They're really, I think, putting it's I don't think it's a question of if there's going to be a move. I think the question is, well, what type of move needs to be made?
Yeah.
If Calvin Austin shows that he's ready to take the leap and be maybe a third guy, I don't think they can say with his stature and his limited route tree and those types of things, you can't really say, oh, he's going to be a number 2 and play all the snaps when we're in that 12 personnel grouping. But if he can be the number 3, then maybe you say, hey, we're going to try to make a move for a veteran number 2 kind of guy, a Tyler Boyd type guy. And I don't know who's out there, but as opposed to like, hey, we just went through OTAs, minicamp, and this is a train wreck. And we got to go out and make an offer. We got to go out and try and get Deebo Samuel, something along those lines. So yes, I think this is an absolute evaluation process right now.
I agree. I think it's something the Steelers do. The Ravens do it a lot too. They go into camp with a 90-man roster that is not going to be the same by the time they get out of it, because they want to see what they've got in guys. And also they want to add players late in the process that are veterans that don't affect the draft pick compensation and anything like that. So there's some definite veracity to doing it this way. The Steelers, for as much as their fans want instant upgrades across the board on some of these things, the Steelers are playing patient ball here, and I think that that's the best way to do things. I agree with you. I wanted to ask you, though, a couple of the guys further down the depth chart, Marquez Callaway, Denzel Mims. I'm just looking through those 2 names specifically to me because of the size and the speed, some of the traits that those guys have. Do you think anybody kind of a dark horse could come out of this group as a guy who could contribute that we're not looking at right now?
I mean, they could, but I'm not holding my breath on it. You look at the guys they've already brought in. If you just run through the names we just ran through, Pickens and Jefferson and Miller and Wilson and Watkins, and there's 5 guys right away. we expect there's going to be another move. I mean, if one of those guys you just mentioned makes the roster, I'd be surprised.
Right.
It's funny. I was just watching before we came on. I was just watching the United Football League. It's the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's probably nobody else watching. It was St. Louis against San Antonio. Well, St. Louis has the Player of the Year in the UFL, and it is Hakeem Butler, who Steelers fans remember. Who there was a lot of excitement about Hakeem Butler two camps ago because boy does he look the part, right? Right. He's a big physical specimen, and he's fast, and blah blah blah. But there's so many intangibles, right? Can you master the playbook? Can you handle the grind and the competition and all of those things? So one of those long shot guys, a Callaway type, everything's got to go right for them, and they've got to get a couple of breaks to even have a shot.
I agree. I don't know if you remember the name Justin Hunter, wide receiver for the Titans. Yeah. Fast, big body, all this hype, and every year during minicamp, training camp, all those things, he was the talk of all the reporters and everything, and it never translated to on the field. And some guys are like that, and so it takes a special breed of human to be able to put it all together. You can't just live on talent at the NFL level like you can get away with sometimes at the collegiate level. So I thought it was you mentioned Hakeem Butler, George Teston in the chat. Thoughts on bringing Hakeem Butler in for another tryout? Would you entertain that, Coach, after the year he's had at the UFL, or is he just excelling now at a place where he fits better?
I think that ship has probably sailed, but
yeah,
I don't know the reasons exactly why he didn't succeed in Pittsburgh. You and I probably both read the same stuff that was on our Slack channel this week. Yep. People speculating it had something to do with playbook and not being able to master the schemes at the NFL level. And if that's the case, then it's probably a done. He's not going to get another shot. But if it was just that he played poorly, that he just didn't perform, they might be interested in kicking the tires. But I think it's a long shot.
I agree, and I would say that adding a guy like him isn't what the Steelers need. If you're going to add to the wide receiver room, it needs to be that bona fide number 2, that bona fide 1B that we're talking about. It doesn't need to be another role-playing guy or upside guy that you're trying to find a diamond in the rough. You've got enough of those guys on the roster right now. Let's not keep doing that. So that would be my take on that question going into that. Hey, let's do this. Let's go ahead and take our break, and when we come back, on the audio side, that is, we'll be talking some of the questions that are coming in. And if you're here listening live, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back to the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts and Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, we've been talking about the roster. We've been talking about the wide receiver position. All of that comes in under new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. And what does he want to do? How is he going to utilize all these players? And so we had a question earlier on. I think it's a good question. And for those who might not be as familiar with what Arthur Smith brings to the table from a schematic standpoint, this question from Mr. No Fly Zone: what scheme you think we run in this year? I'm going to say this is from the offensive perspective, and I'd just like to get your take on what Arthur Smith does on offense as far as schematics go.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot of Arthur Smith tape over the last 5 months, and it's pretty similar between what you see in Tennessee and Atlanta, and probably what you're going to see in Pittsburgh. Big personnel groups, loves tight ends, likes big wide receivers, loves wide receivers who can block. I mean, I contend that Deontay Johnson, the biggest reason he's not here has to do with his unwillingness to block. And so he's going to get into compressed sets, bunch sets, double wing sets. You're going to see tight formations. They're going to run the ball. They're going to run outside zone. They're going to run the gap schemes. He loves the outside zone play. They're going to use that to set up play action. It's a great play action scheme. You're absolutely going to see much more play action than you've seen in recent seasons. I think you're going to see a little bit more of an attempt to push the ball vertically, use the middle of the field more. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both throw good deep balls. So I think ideally the plan looks like this. We're going to establish the run with big personnel. We're going to try to get defenses to drop a safety, play with an extra guy in the box. And then we're going to try to hit shots over their head. We're going to try and throw play actions behind the linebackers when they react to the run. So I think it will look very different from the offense we've seen the last couple of years.
Is it fair to kind of say a lot of the limitations on what we saw out of Atlanta the last couple of years have to do with the quarterback position, and just Desmond Ridder was always going to be a project at the NFL level, but even the pedigree, I think it was a 5th round draft pick by the time he got selected. Did that play into some of the issues we saw in Atlanta? Because in Tennessee, this was a top 10 scoring offense both years that he was at the helm before that actually gave him the job in Atlanta, really. And you had a quarterback who could make it all work in Ryan Tannehill. Do you see a bounce back coming for this Arthur Smith scheme, if you will, in Pittsburgh based on the personnel that they have here in the Steel City?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how having good players helps make you a better coach. Right? So the Tannehill, Derrick Henry, top 5 in the league offensive line combination that he had in Tennessee was perfect for his scheme. And then you got to Atlanta, and the line was a work in progress. They got better over his 3 years there, but he was really hamstrung by the quarterback situation. You had end of career Matt Ryan. Then you had Marcus Mariota, who wasn't very good. And then you had the Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke mess, which was worse than what Pittsburgh had last season. So I think if there's one thing that you could really get on Arthur Smith about, and one thing where you could say, hey, he's got to be better in Pittsburgh in this area. He got a lot of criticism for how he used or didn't use Bijan Robinson last season. And I don't know why he wasn't more comfortable using him more often, giving him more to do, so to speak. And so it'll be very interesting now with 2 running backs in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, how he deploys them. I think you really want to see more of Jaylen Warren. And I think the hope is among Steeler fans that Smith will find the right balance between those 2 guys.
I agree, and I really hope so. I think that this is a team. Obviously, there's going to be some bumps in the road, and you've got a whole new system and a bunch of new players here that you're going to have to gel and get used to all this. So it's going to take some time, but I think this offense has a chance to be much better than we've seen the last few years, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. Here's a good question from Afton Forehead, trying to get it pulled up. My internet's lagging a little bit here. Question is, Coach, which position group are you most impressed with today? Has any group stood out to you as impressive yet to this point?
Well, I'll tell you the group that I'm most interested in is the offensive line, just to see how it's been remade and the potential that the Steelers are going to have 2 new starters, the 2 rookies, is significant. And at some point, maybe there will even be a third. It'll be really interesting just to see them gel and come together. I don't know how great they'll be out of the gate because, again, new pieces in there, going to be a new center for sure. But over time, I really expect to see that position group improve significantly because they've gone from a group. If you think back just a couple of years ago, the O-line was like a collection of misfits, man. Late round draft picks, undrafted free agents, guys that they like Trey Turner, who they'd signed at the end of their career. And now suddenly you got 2 first-round picks. You got a second-round pick. You've got a stud in, say, Amalu. You got another high draft pick in James Daniels. That's a group with pedigree. So I'm really interested to see how they perform. To me, that's the heart and soul of the offense. And as the O-line goes, so will the Steelers.
I agree. You have to start there with this team because it's been the focus of the front office, of the coaching staff, is to rebuild and regroup there. And I think that they've done an admirable job there and with the resources that they've had. I'm interested to see how it plays out because the Steelers famously don't like to start their rookies early. But you've got 2 important ones on that offensive line. I think one or both of those guys are going to have to play early for this team to reach its ceiling quicker. So I think that that's going to play into this. Let's switch to the defensive line, Coach, and let's talk about Isaiah Loudermilk. Let's talk about this defensive line for a minute. This is a group that some have thought maybe it doesn't have the depth that it has had in previous years, but I look at a unit that's not too bad. I don't see a huge problem with depth here. And I also think that the starting three are going to be really good. But as far as Isaiah Loudermilk goes and maybe some of these other fringe guys, do you think Loudermilk specifically makes this team?
I don't think he makes the team. I think it's a deeper group than people realize, right?
Right.
I agree with you. The base 3-4, in that base 3-4, Hayward, Ogunjobi, Benton, that's damn good.
Yeah.
That's a really good three. And then you got Montravius Adams behind him, who has shown that he can be a serviceable starter if he has to be pressed into the lineup. Lowry, the free agent they signed, he's a good football player, man. I mean, I think he doesn't get enough credit for that signing. The Steelers don't get enough credit for that signing. That is a guy who is exactly what you want, a capable veteran who has position flexibility, who has started games before, who is going to give you good reps when he's on the field. And then you got DeMarvin Leal. I don't know, what he is, but I don't think the Steelers are ready to give up on him. And you got Braden Fehoko, who when he was on the field last year did some good things. That's 7 guys right there. Unless Loudermilk can beat out Leal for that 7th spot, I don't see how he makes the team.
Yeah, I might actually give him the edge over Leal based on what we've seen and how the Steelers kind of faded him down the stretch last year. But I don't know. That's going to be a race to watch. It's going to be fun to see. But Leal definitely, if he, 3rd round pick, he's got higher pedigree, and the Steelers saw something in him. So I don't know if that experiment is done yet. It just was put on pause last year as the injuries circuited and things like that. I think that they were trying to rely on other directions. So I agree with you there. Here's one from Ram. Coach, how do you keep grinding? I used to coach high school also. Can't imagine doing your content and coaching at a high level. How do you do it, Coach?
Man, I don't sleep a whole lot, but
right.
No, hey, I'm coming to the end of my teaching career, so I've only got a couple months next year, and then I'll be done. So that'll clear up a lot of space, and I'll really be able to dive in. I can't wait.
Right on.
I love it. I love doing all this stuff. I love the opportunity to spend so much time with a sport that has had a huge impact on my life. So it's work for sure, but when you're passionate about it and you enjoy it, it doesn't feel like work.
Absolutely. I would encourage anybody, if they haven't, to go back and listen to the call sheet. When you were episode 58, you were talking about Jack Lambert and you dove into the Tampa 2. It was great stuff, but the Lambert stuff was really neat. And if you want to get behind what makes Coach KT Smith, that's a little bit of the backstory there. And I really enjoyed that show personally. So go check out the Coach's Call Sheet. That's growing, and I enjoy listening to that every time it comes on. So definitely a great listen. Yeah, man. Okay, Omar Khan's in the chat. I don't know how this happened, but Omar Khan, the Steelers have been known to spend to the cap and have 16 million or so left, with really that wide receiver 2 spot as the only hole. I'm going to pair this with another question here from Tyler Longhurst. Do you see the Steelers making a move to add another wide receiver? Do you think they're staying put because they like what they have already? We talked about this a little bit at the top of the show. So Tyler, I don't know if you missed that, but we talked about how giving some of these young guys a chance to see what they've got. But Coach, you made the point that it's hard to believe the Steelers would feel comfortable going into the season with what they have now. I would assume that means you expect there's a move to be made at wide receiver.
I do. Get Omar back up here. Let him tell him to tell us what's going on, man.
Come on, man. What's going on? I like the do-rag, by the way. I think he should rock that at more press conferences.
That is a solid look for him. So, gangster GM look right there.
Yes, let's go.
Like we were saying, I absolutely think they're in kind of an evaluation process right now, and I will be very surprised if there is not a move. I don't think it's going to be a move that wows people. I'm not expecting a move for Deebo Samuel. Maybe Khan is Khan, right? So we don't always know what to expect, but I'm thinking more along the lines of established veteran number 2 kind of guy to play opposite Pickens, upgrade on a Van Jefferson type. That's what I would expect.
I agree. I agree. Like I said earlier, let's you don't need to go in for depth pieces anymore. If you're going to do something there, swing for the fences a little bit. But again, I'm not saying that's Brandon Ayuk, but it needs to be a guy with some wide receiver 2 experience. Some guys that are free agents right now that have been tossed out there are Michael Thomas and even Hunter Renfrow, but those are slot guys as well. And I don't know if they actually fit the mold of a wide receiver 2 like the Steelers would be looking at. So I would assume that this would be in the form of a trade if we do see anything. But, Jeff Hartman had a great article on his editor's notes article, or letter from the editor is what I'm trying to come out with here, from today, that talked about the trade that never happened at wide receiver. You should go read that if you haven't done so yet on steelcurtainnetwork.com. Let's move on to another question here. This is a fun question, Coach. Let's put on our predictive hats a little bit here. From Jeff Hewitt, do you see anyone on the offense being in the Pro Bowl discussion in 2024?
I'll tell you what, I do, but let me preface that by saying this. Jeremy, tell me this.
No.
If Russell Wilson makes the Pro Bowl, what's that mean for the Steelers this year?
Man, so I have mixed feelings about the Pro Bowl, Coach, and you might too. To me, it's more of a popularity contest these days than anything, but it still has some merit to it. You're not going to nobody's going to be popular if they haven't put up some sort of good stats. So if Russell Wilson makes the Pro Bowl, I think this is a team that's a division champion type team in 2024. I'm not saying they actually win it, but they're in that conversation till the very end and just might just barely lose out, but they're a division winner potentially and a playoff winner potentially as well.
Yeah, because that's my hope. Like if you said, hey, you can pick one guy on the Steelers offense to have a Pro Bowl season, I'd say make it Russ, because that means the Steelers are going to be in really good shape. But who do I think being in the discussion? Sayamalu. I thought he was excellent last year, and I think this scheme will benefit him. I mean, he's an old school grinder who wants to put his hand in the ground and get off the ball and knock people, off the football, and that's what they're going to try to do in this offense. I think Pickens, as a true number 1 now, where he's going to absorb a lot of Deontay Johnson's targets, has obviously the opportunity to be a Pro Bowl guy. And what you've heard so far out of Football and Shorts season is that the Russell Wilson-Pat Freiermuth relationship is off to a tremendous start. So I think you could probably put Freiermuth, knock on wood right now, that he stays healthy in that conversation as well.
Yeah, I agree. And, if for some reason, because I'm not sure how the running back situation is going to play out specifically, but one of those guys could have a huge year in this offense, the way it's set up. So by the end of things, if Najee Harris puts together 1,300 yards this year instead of just over 1,000, because the efficiency goes up and the team is just a better rushing offense overall, then maybe one of those guys sneaks in. Najee would be my pick of the two potentially to get a Pro Bowl nod this year, if he were to play out of his mind. But and then if either Najee or Jaylen Warren goes down with injury, let's pray that that's not the case. But whoever gets the full load in that case could have a really big season as well, in my opinion. So those would be my dark horse candidates. But I like everybody you said. I love Sayamalu. I love George Pickens' chances if he stays healthy. I don't know if you're familiar. Dave Damashek and used to do his Jenga Pieces podcast every year, where he would go through the NFL teams and pick the one piece of that team, the one player or coach. If you pulled them out of there, the team would fall apart. I think George Pickens on this offense could be that player this year,
especially if they don't make a move for another wide receiver for sure. Yeah, he's got to be the guy, right? He's got to be able to step up and be a legit number 1. And obviously stay healthy.
Absolutely. All right, a couple more questions here, Coach. Do you think Ryan Watts stays at cornerback? This from Afton Fora. That's a deep room right now. Do you think Ryan Watts makes his team or stays at cornerback? What's your thoughts here?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not going to try to weigh in on something that I don't feel like I know that much about. I don't know enough about Ryan Watts to be able to intelligently answer that question. I mean, you might be a better one, Jeremy, to answer that. I know that the Steelers are experimenting with some of those corners at safety. So if he's got the position versatility, then that might be his ticket to the roster. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, like, as a prospect, he's always been intriguing because of the size and those athletic numbers that he has. But as far as on this team this year with the guys that they already have, I think that he's well behind the 8 ball in making this roster, just because, I mean, you've got Corey Trice, Darius Rush. They're the same players trying to do the same thing, and they're a year further along in this system. And the Steelers have, more invested specifically in Trice now because he's a second-year player. But Watts, it'll be interesting to see. I just think that he's kind of one of many who can do the same thing, and it sounds like to me that would put him on the back burner of the roster. But if he moves to safety, that could be the change they need. I think of Marcus Allen a few years back for the Steelers, who was kind of that safety linebacker hybrid that would come in on dime and played on special teams. I think that's Ryan Watts' key to getting a roster spot, if he can prove to be valuable in that regard. But I would say that there's some other guys ahead of him on the list that I would take above him as the 6th-round rookie this year. So that would just be my consideration with it.
Okay. I think, go ahead. Sorry, man.
No, you go ahead, weigh in on this again, and then we'll go back.
I think the Steelers have done a nice job piecing together a serviceable cornerback room without having to spend either significant draft capital or free agent money on it. I think the Dante Jackson acquisition in the Deontay Johnson trade is going to work out pretty well. I think he's going to be an upgrade as a number 2 over Levi Wallace. And then obviously the Sutton signing really solidified. I was really nervous about the slot corner position.
Me
too. The Steelers played about 60% of their snaps with a nickel on the field in some way, shape, or form. And the guys that got most of the snaps in that spot last year were Sullivan and Peterson, and both those dudes are gone. Yep. And it just felt like, man, are they really going to roll with like a Trice or one of these, Beanie Bishop kind of like undrafted free agent? It just felt like that was a glaring weakness. And so I feel like that their top 3 corners are pretty strong. And if Trice turns out to be the player that people think he is, it could be a sneaky good corner room.
It could, and you can't discount what Minkah Fitzpatrick does for that room as well, with all the things that he provides for that defense. So I think that the secondary is in pretty good shape now that they do have Cam Sutton. Gives them so much more versatility. And I know, an important thing too is being able to take some of those guys that you would rather be depth pieces that were previously like in the lead dog for a starting position and bumping them back down to depth pieces. That makes you feel better as a coach when you can do that as well. So, all right, Coach, just 3 more questions here. We'll just do like a rapid fire real quick. Inside linebacker group looks like it should be a good one. Crazy how much of an upgrade that position is this year. What's your take on the linebackers real quick? Are you excited for them?
Oh my gosh. Well, Afton asked if, what group I was most intrigued by. And I said, O-line. The 1A to that answer is the inside backers. I'm so excited to watch Patrick Queen play with the Landon Roberts. I think that combination is fantastic. I think it's going to resemble Vince Williams, Ryan Shazier. Will it be at that level? I don't know, but I think that the marriage of those two is reminiscent of Williams and Shazier together. I think they're going to play off of each other really well. If you're not excited to see Peyton Wilson play, man, and wake up to him, because when you watch his college stuff, you're like, damn, he just jumps off the screen with his intensity and his playmaking ability. So those 3 guys are just really exciting, and I can't wait to watch him play.
Yeah. Peyton Wilson, if you're not careful, will literally jump off the screen because he's just that athletic and great a mover. So it was fun to watch him at his highlights, his college tape, and the combine workout that he had as well. So, okay, here we go. Will JPJ have revenge at camp versus Pickens? This was a big one last year. You think JPJ is up to the task this year?
I'll tell you what, man. Anybody listening, if you ever get a chance to go to training camp,
Yes.
Go just for the trash talk. It is epic. It is, I mean,
Get there early
so,
and get up close so you can hear it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. If you can get close enough. And I will say this, man, it is all respectful.
Yeah.
It's healthy competition. They're having fun, but don't think for a second that they're not serious when they talk about rivalry and wanting to get the best of each other. These guys are elite professionals. George Pickens and Joey Porter Jr. are two of the best in the world at what they do, and they have tremendous pride in what they do, and they don't want to get beat. They don't want to get beat for bragging rights, for Twitter, for all of it, all of those reasons. And so those camp battles are fascinating to watch.
Yes. And it's a battle of style as well, because they both want to be the physical enforcer at their position. George Pickens wants to push people around, and Joey Porter Jr. wants to lock people down, and they want to play a physical brand of football. So the combat of that style as well is a lot of fun to watch. Okay, final one here from Ram. Which quarterback do you really want for the majority of the season? Time for some honesty, Coach. What you going with?
I really want Justin Fields, man.
Yeah,
I feel it's so tantalizing because he's so talented. He's so talented. But I fully acknowledge that on June 8th, whatever today is, June 9th, Russell Wilson's a better quarterback. But Justin Fields has so much potential. And if the Steelers can figure out how to harness it long term, then I think they have their next franchise quarterback. But that's a big if. That's a big if. There's a lot riding on their development of Justin Fields over the next several months.
Yep, I agree. I've said since they acquired him that the best thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers would be for Justin Fields to go into training camp preseason and just prove that he's the better guy, and not for anything on Russell Wilson's end. Russell Wilson plays just fine, but that Justin Fields just shows that he cannot be sat on the bench. And then if he were to win the job outright and then be the better quarterback and be the quarterback in the future, that's the best thing for the Steelers. But I think, they've got either way, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, whoever is in the starting lineup, they're better off than they were last year, and they're trending in the right direction. I think that is definitely something that we can kind of stake our hats on here. Coach, it's been a lot of fun to have you on the show today. Any final thoughts? Go ahead and plug what you've got coming up on the Steel Curtain Network and beyond this coming week.
Cam Sutton Film Room coming out tomorrow on Steel Curtain Network YouTube channel. There'll be an article with it on our website. Call Sheet Show runs every Thursday, and it's episode 60. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about Dan Marino, even though he obviously didn't wear number 60, and there'll be a Dan Marino connection in there. But the interesting conversation will be this: Dan Marino, for as much of a Hall of Famer and all-time great as he is, finished his career with a completion percentage of lower than 60%, which today would put him at the bottom of the NFL. And so we're going to talk about how the passing game has really changed over the last 25 years or so.
Great stuff, as always, from Coach Smith. Coach, again, thanks so much for coming on the show this week. It's been a lot of fun. We'll have you on again sometime as the season gets closer. But I know you've got some more stuff to do tonight, so I'll let you go. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time here on the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A.